we'll call the meeting to order. Can you, Sarah, hear, and Mickey, you can hear?
Yes,
Okay. Let me see. We've got everybody here with the exception of Maggie. She's not able to join us tonight. So let's go on to approval of the draft minutes. I think those were sent out by our illustrious secretary. Are there any corrections?
Move to accept the minutes as submitted.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second.
Oh my goodness.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, good, okay. Looks like we have no individuals in the room, so there is no public comment. Okay, so we'll get right into this. The first issue is a discussion on a report to go to the town council. And what we have is right now, we have basically, I think this has been sent to you all. We have 3 documents. We have the draft that Frank put together, which is the one with
Maggie.
pardon?
Frank and Maggie.
Frank and Maggie, and that's several pages in length. We have a untitled one from Jesse, a page in length. No, 2 pages in length, 2.5 pages in length, and then we have the final one on health, which Victor and Sarah put together, and so you all should have that. So what I would, I think we should do is sort of talk about what we want to do to put together some sort of final effort here, so we get a report to the town council when we meet with them, and I'll tell you a little bit about a potential meeting, and maybe I should say it right now. I finally, after almost a week of making investigations to the town hall, John Burke finally called me back and said the very earliest that we possibly could meet with the town council would be March 22nd at the end of their meeting. Apparently, the staff is having some difficulty getting the town council to get through their agenda, and so it's spilling over from one meeting to the next, and they're in something of a little bit of a panic because this is budget season and they have things they have to do, and that includes doing the budget in a timely manner. So the earliest we can meet with them would be the 22nd. So what I was thinking that maybe we should do is see if we all agree that we should try to get a final report together by our next meeting, which would be March 10th. Does that sound like that would be a plan?
Yeah, it's a plan.
A plan?
I'm going to be out of the country on the 10th, for the 10th through the 25th.
Okay, you'll be out of the country. Sarah will be out of commission that time. Mickey, will you be back by then?
I'll be back. I need to look at my calendar, though. We are going to be going to Irene's high school reunion around then. Hey, I'll look, let me look at my calendar. Hang on.
Okay. Okay, so what I thought we should do right now is spend a few minutes of talking about, hopefully you've all had a chance to read these several documents, but we ought to go through and see if we get an agreement as to what we ought to actually have in what we've got is basically 3 different formats right now. We need to pull it into one format for starters. And I guess what we need to do is talk about what our thoughts are about how to do that. And I have a couple of things that I think are important. One, I think, is that we basically probably need to basically put together now an outline, just outline what we already have so that we can easily see how various pieces fit together. Because there is in fact some overlap between what Frank and Maggie have and what Jesse has
Sure.
and what I have. So we need to do that
Yeah.
right up front.
Yeah, we recognize that when we. put it
Yeah,
together.
yeah. And then,
Just wanted it to be clear, it had to be in there.
Right, tell them twice.
sorry. And we all have to do is in some way that they'll actually read it, which is
Which is saying brief.
saying it has to be brief. The other thing that we don't have in any of this right now is what we've actually recommended and actually done. And I was going to run down a quick list with you to see whether you agree. We were asked to sit on the Groton Low Employment Project. We can say in a few words what we've done with that. Nothing's really happened with that, but that we participated in that. We have a resolution that's gone before the town council and they have passed it. We've had no further response from them. We have a staff recommendation, for the town of Groton. We have what I just heard today was that announcement will be out on the street in 4 weeks.
Why
I
not?
know.
What's the matter with next week?
I didn't get into it,
Unbelievable.
but
It
that's
really is unbelievable.
it's where they're at. And then we have several other things. We have we need to mention that we've actually met with the council on 3 different occasions to tell them what we're up to. And we don't have to just, we just have to say, so we say we have to do that. And then we have a new item on the agenda that the task force is likely to be invited to participate in the Mystic River sea level rise flood issue that's been funded by the budget.
Fisheries,
The
national fisheries. And
yeah.
Foundation.
And so those are the sort of things that we've actually done. Now, this does not include individual stuff like Frank has done a bunch of individual meetings, and Victor, you've done a bunch of individual meetings, particularly with the health district.
So,
And I don't know if we want to include that.
Well, in newspaper articles.
Oh, yeah.
definitely.
Wow, yes.
And we might even bring a copy of that current article to them.
Yeah, news articles, and we've got,
And Fagans, right? But that's-
we've got Fagans, we've got
Also-
the Hartford Current, we've got a one. Yeah, those are the basic ones, and then there's the
NPR.
NPR one, so there's 3 where we've been involved with there, so I think that's worth bringing to their attention.
If not actually handing out, particularly that Hartford Current article, which I think really does lay out, sets out Groton as being kind of a poster child for the need for the kind of things that we're looking at, would be, just hand them out copies in case they haven't seen it.
We can attach that, I think, as an attachment to the document in the form of a.
Poster child that haven't done anything.
And the coverage is so good. It not only was out in the Hartford Current, but it was picked up by AP, right?
It
Or
was picked
something
up
like
by the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yeah.
But they see it through the.
Yeah. So I think those are all things that are worth
Yeah.
just bringing to their attention briefly.
Zell, maybe you're going to be bringing this up later in the meeting, but I'm afraid I missed the meeting with the planning department. Did that happen? And maybe later in the meeting, you could give a report on it if it did. In any case, maybe that's something that needs to be mentioned as well.
Mickey, go ahead, Frank.
Can't understand you, Mick. What department?
Meeting with planning department.
Planning, sorry.
No, we have not met with planning.
Yes,
Well, we
did.
have.
Well, yes, we did. He's talking about the meeting you and I and Frank went to.
Oh, okay, that was about, okay. Um,
Got it.
We have had a meeting with the planning office people, but that was specifically on the Mystic River sea level rise flooding issue, but not generally about overall planning.
No, but careful now. Over the course of the year, and can you guys online hear us okay?
Yes,
Over the course of the year, or 2.5, we met with planning
Oh, absolutely.
on several occasions.
Right.
Yeah.
Also met with them to take them to circuit. So there's been,
Now-
I don't know that we need to go into that. I think, Mick, you're referring to the meeting we had recently on the flooding?
Yes,
We did have a meeting. And Sarah, Frank, and I attended that on behalf of the task force with the town manager, director of planning, assistant director of planning, and a staff person.
Right.
So we have done that. Now, the question I have, and I think we've said that we met with a variety of organizations, and I'm not sure that's necessary to put in a report like this, other than to say that we have done that.
You met with all, not a variety of organizations.
We met with them all.
Town
You
departments.
met with all departments of the town,
Yes,
plus Groton Utilities and Eversource,
right.
any other, and the Ledge Light.
That's right.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think you ought to mention that to them.
Okay, then we can
Absolutely.
include that in there then.
Yeah. Right.
And basically what we found out is that they've all have pretty much done a bunch of planning studies, all of which have not been particularly well followed through on.
Yeah, well,
I mean, we'll have to finesse that carefully, but that's essentially what
something like that.
we've got it. There are two items that, as I went back and read Frank's and Maggie's piece, is that my question is, the language has changed over the last couple of years. 10 years ago, everybody talked about mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation was reducing greenhouse gases, and adaptation was how do we adapt. That has been changed to resiliency and sustainability, and there is some difference there, and I wonder if we ought to not explain that in the text of the town council.
I think you don't have the time to do all this.
I was gonna say, I don't think.
There
you
was,
need to
in fact,
factor-
as Maggie and I worked through this, Maggie raised some questions about adaptation.
Okay,
And that's why you'll see it, there'll be more pieces of it in there. The whys of it, well, if we go for a minute back to the beginning.
Yep.
I think we ought to have clearly in mind what we were charged to do.
Yep.
And I think I've forgotten it somewhere. But what we were charged to do.
yeah,
Because it relates very much into what we have done and what we will do. So that our charge, I think the place to start. And as we viewed that charge, we did the following, and you can go down that line.
okay,
And then the next line is, and we have some thoughts on some pieces of this, education you might mention.
Yep.
But we really are waiting. We would like to hear what you want us.
Right.
Where do we go with you,
right,
for you,
right.
that sort of thing. Blink, 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 3 pieces.
Okay, so the part that I think that we have talked about is we basically come up with 4 issues that we feel that are important. One is the flood, as we've already said, the flooding extreme event, the energy, and then the health. And the fourth one although we hadn't called it that before, is really education of all of that.
It's really
Education.
education, sorry.
Yeah, so it's really 4 issues.
Yeah,
And-
education related to all of the above.
Yeah, and but part of my wanting to put that in there is, my feeling is that if we listed a big, huge number of things, they would just throw their hands up and say, we can't do that. If we give them 4 broad concepts, then they may be able to handle it.
And I would hope priorities within them.
Yeah, I don't think we know what the priorities are until we can give our priorities.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. We have to do that in a way that we're trying to extract what their priorities are.
Now, we go back to the charge, they said make recommendations to us.
Right,
That was very
Okay.
specific in that.
okay.
Right.
Okay, now, one of the things that occurred to me is that, do we want to make a comparison of what has happened with COVID as basically a significant event in our community, and how we responded to that, as opposed to what's likely to be the problem with climate change going forward? Do we want to make that
I think just in passing.
in passing?
You fit into your part.
Okay,
It's a one-line report.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that the emergency management group that had to vote on what is the greatest threat before COVID. Pandemic. So a year later, this came out in 2000.
That's it. You want a card number?
2018. So 2 years later, we have a pandemic. So.
Okay, no, that's no worries. So.
Everybody said it.
What time? 6:15?
Yeah.
Okay, thank
The
you very much.
utility of prophecy, because it's the same thing. We can talk about what a storm might do. They say, yeah, and then we get the storm of the century.
But these are highly likely. That's
Getting
why
more and more likely.
Well,
this is not just
increasing,
throwing a
yeah,
dart
absolutely.
blindly.
right.
We all know the do.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Okay, so then within this, what we have here already, there are clearly some things that are short-term, and there are some things that are long-term.
Longer term.
Short-term things, obviously around education, need to happen starting now. Longer,
Margarita, sausage, mushroom, pepperoni.
why would you tell us feedback?
Their plate size.
No feedback. There's somebody.
6:15 pick up. You have, they give you a
Have a
time.
radio on?
Can you put us on mute? Put them on mute.
Okay, I can't have you talking while I'm on this apparently. Okay, bye.
You're on 2 Zooms there. huh?
2 Zooms, huh?
No, I have my husband talking to me while we're here, which I hadn't appreciated even with headphones. He gets picked up. I don't know how that's possible, but he does.
Brothers watching.
I guess so.
Okay, back to my point. So I think it's important that we try to talk about what we think can be done soon and what is much, go ahead,
I
Jen.
think that's what I meant by priorities. Sort of
Okay.
This is just as an example, and I really changed my mind about this, and Frank, would be interested in your comments. But FEMA's community rating system
Mhm.
is a very laborious process. It
Mhm.
requires a lot of staff time. And so I had it as first, I put it as last. And if I was having a conversation, I'd say, sign up for it. All of these things are worth doing anyway. You don't have to start submitting all the data and do all that, which is a lot of reporting, but it gives the town a lot of suggestions as to things they ought to do that would benefit those at risk of flood.
Well, override, to me, overriding priority is to get this position filled.
Right now,
Yeah,
and by
So-
March 22nd, it ought to be on the street.
Because that goes back to the whole resolution that was passed by the town that says that we should be, all departments across the board should be looking at these issues and how they can help mitigate or provide resilience, or however you want to phrase it. But the fact is that that's the overarching priority as far as I think we're concerned.
Pretty high.
okay, that's very high. Okay, so how would you?
Well, that's priority. You're beyond the introduction and the summary of what's been done.
Yeah,
And now you're establishing some priorities for
Priorities.
what will be done.
okay,
And our number one priority is filling that position.
okay. Then what I would like to suggest that we sort of, so we have long-term, short-term. Number one is fill the position, but then I would like to somehow say in here that if we're, whatever we do, we have to measure it so that we can manage it. And what I mean by that, if we are going to get electric cars, how many do we have? What's it cost us to run them? And so we start to, as we do these things, start to have some way of having an accounting for what we're doing. Or if we're putting solar panels on roofs, what is the energy consumption in that building? How does that change? And I think those are pretty straightforward things, but we need to say that somehow.
Mhm.
Are you agree with us?
It's-
Or?
I mean,
Let
the way
me
it's
tell you
benchmarking.
where I'm, and
Go ahead.
Sarah can jump in on this. I left our meeting in early January with the feeling that we were viewed by some number of people in this administration as a pain in the ass, as a group that is just bringing more work for me to do. We, of course, view ourselves as trying to help them and looking at, from a professional standpoint, some of the issues that are going to affect the town. But I don't think we're viewed that way. Right away, you say you're going to bring in the town ranking and it's going to require a lot of staff time. There you go again, he says. So I'm trying to figure out if I'm in any way right, and maybe it's just endemic. It's just the minute you have a committee and a committee is around a town or a government agency, you're going to be viewed as a bit of a pain. Just bringing us more work. Maybe that's just a given. But forgetting that for the minute and making it personal, you think about this, that the reason that the hire is priority is because we seek action.
That's right.
No more planning documents. We want to see we can see another planning document, but it's got to have a completion at the end of it. We put the drains
Follow
in,
through.
we raise the road, we put in the health centers and the hideaways that are needed, ... We go and get some grants to get and work around what solar panels mean to Eversource, and it goes, the net metering issue is hot in this country right now. Okay. And so we see that individual as a front line to getting things done. That may or may not be consistent with the way John Reiner views that individual. And I'm not sure how much we can say to the town council, we can say or should say, or maybe that's what I'm questioning. How much should we say to the town council about the way this individual should be working, or what we seek from that individual, what we recommend you seek from that individual? All keeping in mind this business of we're trying to improve our working relationship with some elements of the town. Maybe we can. I'm not afraid of being a pain, don't get me wrong. You know that, right?
Why are you smiling, Sarah?
Well, it shows a good sense of self-awareness. I mean, I think you're right that, you know, I certainly walked away from that meeting feeling like, and you know, you'd have to ask them the 29 reasons why it may be, but that they've heard it. They're maybe tired of hearing it repeated to them. They're tired of our group coming in as the experts, as if they don't know or understand or have any ideas of their own of how to solve or address this. And, you know, I don't know what more, whoops, I'm sorry. I'm going to take off the fade. I think that's a problem here. Anyway, I think it's an issue. So I think we have to decide how much more we kind of push here, what the things that are the most important to do are, to be concise about those, and to not, you know, kind of talk without listening to them.
We keep it short. We present our priorities, one or two, but we're as interested in hearing what they have to say.
If you frame it that way, then
It does not come off that way when we are in a room. We spent the first, and I timed it, 12 minutes speaking without pause at that meeting.
Right.
I mean, we're not good at shutting up. We're just not.
And it's, in a sense, I think that what we're presenting to the town council is our recommendations and our sense of what priorities ought to be. They then have the task of directing the town staff to act on whatever ones of those they think. But this is our guidance as you decide what the town, and that's to John Burke, and it's to John Weiner, and it's to the new hire and to everybody else. But we obviously can't say you got to do this, but what they asked us to do was make recommendations as to what they ought to do. And they may throw some out and say, that's beyond anything that we can conceive of doing.
does that, how does that resonate with folks? Victor? Right,
It sounds fun.
okay.
That sounds right. I think we should put our weight behind the most important things to us, and then acknowledge that the town is going to have to figure its own way here, and that they're going to implement it in a way that we might not have chosen or have foreseen or entirely agree with, but that some good is going to come out of it. I mean, you know, listen, it's not perfect that they got this grant on the Mystic River. It's not a perfect design, that it's Mystic only, but good for them that they got something and that they're starting the process.
Okay, okay. So I think we at this point has to be carefully captured in the in the report.
This point being,
The point that we're making a recommendation to the council.
that's right.
I mean, I think that's important. Is that basically what you're saying, sir? And you're gonna craft that, right? Like you're skiing?
Nope.
Tried. Okay. Okay, so the other point that I like, I guess, and maybe it's my way of trying to get the town engaged is to sort of talk about what we easily can do. That is, what is the low-hanging fruit? Because some of the stuff is not rocket science. You can buy a hybrid car today. You don't have to invent one. You can put high efficiency lights in. It's a matter of plugging them in.
Please don't use that example.
Well,
Because
no.
that's what happens. That's all they do. Because they pick off the low-hanging fruit and then you can't afford to do anything else. You need to do things in a comprehensive way. That's not true of cars, but it's certainly true of efficiency. Or all we'll do is lighting forever and ever because it keeps getting better. And we'll never do the deeper retrofits, or it's kind of like in your house, you know, it's easy to put in efficient appliances and things like that. It's much more expensive and harder to get the payback on windows.
Or yeah, insulate.
And
Yeah, yeah.
insulation is a no-brainer, but the windows are the big one. And so like in the energy efficiency programs, when they do the low income, they make sure that they have a cost benefit ratio that allows them to do that, which otherwise you'd never. do.
Okay, I agree with you on that, except there are people who are looking at how do you save money? I mean, that's.
And that's all they look at. We
That's
heard
all they
that,
look
right?
at.
That's all they look at.
That was policy.
And
We
if you
heard that.
go back and you
Yeah.
look at that Peregrine report, they picked the low hanging fruit and everything else is still sitting there. And every one of those other things probably still makes sense to do.
Okay,
So the question is, if we should aim higher, the likelihood that it will get done and picked up is low. So we end up with no net movement in any direction. And so I think a judgment call has to include an assessment of what is realistic, doable, and in a time frame where at least this administration can take credit for it. And unfortunately, that is an incremental approach
Mhm.
that we all know we just don't have time. But I don't know that the alternative
Mm.
is
No, I think
is
politically,
laudable, but not practical.
within a political framework,
Yeah,
the incremental is probably the only realistic way to go at it, right?
it's always the only way that works.
What is that?
with the exception, I would say,
Not the only way. I
no,
take
but
that back.
the only place where there are good opportunities is when you have, like we seem to be having, a flood of federal money coming in, where they say, hey, do it our way, and you do it big, or you don't do it. And then you can do things. But if you have to do it Joe Q town or Joe Q bureaucrat, then I think you're right.
Well, I don't think that the hiring of a resiliency and sustainability manager for the town is low hanging fruit. I think we actually got some higher hanging fruit in that one because that costs the town money, and I think that we want to make sure that what the previous town council did is supported and continued by the current town council. I think that when you start talking about higher hanging fruit, I think you start to talk about things like zoning regulations and so on that are not necessarily an expense to the town as much as they are political hot potatoes. Getting low hanging fruit is better than not getting low hanging fruit. And I think once we have this manager on board, some of these recommendations, I hope if this person is on the ball, are going to be coming from them. And I think that our job in the future is going to be to back this person up, because some of them are going to be hot potatoes. And you can see where this person could easily make some enemies pretty quickly if we don't show, well, we need to be their ally to counteract any flack.
I'm not sure I understood the last part of what you just said.
I think our role, it needs to be to support the incoming manager of resiliency and sustainability, to back them up when the politics gets hot.
I agree with your point, Mickey. I mean, that would be nice. I wonder if the town manager and planner wants that. I mean, if you look at the reporting structure and whatnot, you're kind of intervening in a way between a supervisor-supervisee relationship. And I'm wondering how problematic that may be for them. I think your suggestion is a good one, to mentor them, to coach them, to help them to understand some key connections and resources in the area. But, you know, in the end, it's going to be up to the people that supervise whether they want that.
Yeah, but you know, I actually don't know what the current staffing is for things like the Conservation Commission, but I know that when I was member of the Conservation Commission, we had a staff person. And we had some things that were kind of political hot potatoes, like studying up recycling. And that person was basically had the cover that they were implementing things that the Conservation Commission was opposing. And so I think that to some extent, that's always the case. Anytime you have well, as Frank said, you know, that's probably why some of these town officials would rather not have any politicians and any, like, I mean, any commissions, you know, civilians, so to speak, or whatever, meddling in their work domain. But that's the way it is.
And we don't have staff to provide an interface with different departments. So it's.
Well, I mean,
Conservation at least had a staff person.
right, I mean, but this is, so our job is a little bit harder because, you know, when I was on the Conservation Commission now 40 years ago, I came in and I think Frank and I were on that together. And very first step, and you were after that, is we didn't have a staff person in the town. We had a secretary who we hired to come take our minutes and notes. And that was the first, that was our first step. And that then led to a staff person being assigned from the town. And that's how that worked. And so we're in a similar situation where we're a startup, if you will. And so I guess that's one of the questions I have toward the end of this thing, is that are we going to recommend a role that we might have going forward? In other words, are you willing to create a sustainability and resiliency commissioner and do it and set it up so it's parallel to the other commissions? And that's something that, I don't know, that's kind of crucial to making things happen in the long term.
You're getting ahead of yourself on your list.
I know.
So somewhere in this whole thing, way at the beginning, there is the resolution that ought to be read again into the record, if you want,
Yep.
so that they know it.
Yep.
In order to implement this, we felt that it was essential that there be a hire. And the hire is going, you got that, that's high in the priority.
Right.
And then below that, you come at some other efforts that ought to get going, or the town ought to get going on. And the carbon footprint business is one. And there is the solar, there falls the solar panels on this, a solar panel policy. And that goes beyond solar panels on the roof of the school, because we heard from John aside at the January meeting that this is ongoing, whatever that means.
They are applying for Z-Rex.
Okay, so that's ongoing. But there, you can go further in the town. There's a lot of roofs that are available and becoming available that might very well take on solar panels. But that's a policy kind of a thing, because it involves the net metering and Eversource and state public service commission, or whatever they call themselves. We think of the electrification of some number of town vehicles. And we thought that the police department was a good place to start. although we heard that they didn't satisfy some police car regulations or something. They aren't strong enough, whatever they are. But
Yeah, I had to leave because I have another meeting I have to be at 6 o'clock. But I'm a little ambivalent about us having any role at all in the future as a group. I think some of the reasons, our input has been technical at the base and policy at the top. And the policy with that resolution is probably the biggest accomplishment. I think hiring somebody is good, but as far as I'm concerned, that person is and will not, and by hiring somebody, nothing has changed. They were just going to have another warm body who can do things. But I think the ambivalence comes from the fact that the group that I see really having a day-to-day impact on policy and decisions that are important for climate sustainability and resilience are the advocacy groups. The Groton Conservation Advocates is probably the best example because my wife is a co-founder along with Liz.
sure,
They take, data centers. They take covering football fields with plastic. They take, I mean, if you look at the list of accomplishments in a year that are all advocacy, intense, letter writing, coming to every meeting, it's an advocacy position. And what they do is they overnight become quasi-experts or go talk to experts around the country. And they come and they influence the decisions that the town makes.
town council.
Town council makes on every one of these items. And I have to say, quite successful. Okay,
Quite a few.
I'll tell you, these folks are like rabid dogs. Once they grab it, they don't quit, and they are good, and they're getting better. The problem with that from our task force is that all of that is a reactionary thing, reactive to things. They're going to cut trees, they're going to do a development, they're going to instead of redevelopment, they're going to. And there have been a few things like the plastic ban, single-use plastic ban, that was moving the ball forward in terms of sustainability. And what our agenda is to really not be reactive necessarily, but to be proactive. And so we're talking about the town fleet. We had a great presentation on composting. Great presentation with great examples of what's going on. And I think we all left that meeting pretty pumped up. And my ambivalence is that if we were to take a topic like that and advocate intensely, lobby for it, bug them, elect the people that were going to do that, we're going to have to do the kind of work that I know I don't have hours in the day to do. Now, I completely agree with Sarah that we have probably just about, and with you, Frank, that we may have exhausted the use of our technical know-how, okay?
Mhm.
And I think having people like you and all of you guys, as technical advisors in their respective areas is a godsend. It's unbelievable. I mean, if I had to pay you for what you, I mean, it would be $500 an hour for you to be there.
Mhm.
Okay, and yet you are volunteering your respective times to do all that. So the technical part of this is, I agree very much with what Sarah said. I think we can start getting annoying. You already said it, Frank.
That's a better way of saying it.
Well, Sarah is more diplomatic, as I
That's
said.
right. Don't be a pain in the ass. Be
No.
annoying.
No, like Western Church or so, diplomacy is telling somebody to go to hell
That's
in
right.
such a way that they ask you for directions.
That's right. That's
So
right.
we, so anyways, I have to go, but it's, I am a little bit ambivalent about what role we should play. I can speak for myself because of.
We don't have to put that in this report.
No, you don't have to put that in this report, but it's a consideration for if we're gonna have a role. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
going forward,
What is our role?
yeah, then
Our role is what we've been directed to do,
well,
and
but I think we have accomplished that. I think that report, we are a task force to make recommendations. The recommendations have been made. The only thing in reading Sarah and my contribution to that is that I probably have to go back. We both have to go back and look and see if there are any updates that are required, but that will take a couple hours, you know, and then produce an update. I cannot be late for this meeting. So that's what I was saying.
okay.
Ambivalent is a very kind way of putting it. That's exactly right.
Well, it's exactly the way I feel about this. I think it's hugely important.
Victor, I don't know whether Sarah told you, but if you're gonna sit at that meeting and Sarah gave a 5-minute introduction to the subject. And this is what we are, how can we help on this project that's coming?
Silence, deafening silence.
Well, but Frank, I'm not surprised, you know, when you know, we write a friend who is sick and says, let us know anything we can do to help. They never tell me what to do. You know, you fix a meal, you take him to the doctor, you show up, you do it. I'm not surprised that they're not gonna come to
Victor,
you
don't
with all
drive,
your expertise and pick your brain. I wish they would.
Victor, don't
Yeah.
drive too fast getting home.
No,
You can't. afford a ticket.
I'll make it. See you guys.
Thank you.
Pleasure to see you.
Bye, Victor.
Bye, Sarah.
I actually don't think I find myself that busy. We probably don't talk about this. I think we're in a difficult position to try to keep together as a task force because we need to advocate. And I've always felt this thing that, you know, okay, the task force is sort of an instrument of the town. So how much can we just say
Against the town or
right
something.
or what?
Pick a
Yeah.
name.
Right, whatever. And so I would love to give them the report, be able to come back to it in things before the town, budget items, whatever else, to just sort of say,
And let
and,
me remind you of your resolution.
right.
Yeah.
that
I
kind of
mean,
thing.
I have a little bit of a different view of this, partly because I guess I was a bureaucrat for so long. But I should just give you the example. I decided that reducing greenhouse gases in the transportation sector, because it was 38%.
Number one.
What can I do about it?
Yeah.
Well, I started looking around and I got a piece of legislation, $2.3 million. And the guys are sitting up there trying to figure out what to do with it. So I advocated for something and did it in a way that DOT wasn't exactly happy about, but they're gonna have to do it now, which ought to benefit the town. And so I think there is a role for advocating from a place like we are. Now, why is it important? Because when they say, well, who are you, Stever? I said, well, I'm chairman of the task force. And they go, oh, okay. So there is a value here. It's not just all of. Now, it's not quite like what's going on in my own household and Victor's right now, where they have latched on to the data center and are really gonna work that until they understand what's going on. Or the redevelopment of the Mr. Earl School, where they have, it's different. But there are things that we can do. So and I'm not sure, I mean, there are days that I feel like we have run our course. Then there are other days I think we have more to do. And part of what I'm thinking is that, so maybe we get together a well-crafted report and we say, here it is. And if we get no response back,
So, oh, sorry. I really think that, you know, and maybe this is impossible right now with everything that's going on, and my perception is how tumultuous the council is right now and the mayor, and it just seems very dysfunctional to me. I don't know if that's accurate, but just given how long it took them to pick a mayor. Maybe there's a meet part way here where we interact directly with the mayor on, you know, what do they want? We were commissioned by a whole different council, a different administration, different set of people. You know, there's the possibility that they're going to hire this person. I think it'd be very nice if members of the task force were available to help that person come up to speed to the extent their supervisor appreciated and wanted that. I mean, there's certainly a great deal of expertise around the table that you would hope someone would be interested in tapping into. It may be as minimal as that. It may be that you get reoriented in some other way or approach. I don't know, in which case you may need to, you know, add or subtract members off the task force to fulfill that new mandate. But until you have some pretty clear guidance from the current council and administration and the current mayor as to what they really are interested in, and, you know, they have the opportunity to interact too with the town employees to get their feedback. I think, you know, you're kind of in a bit of a lame duck position right now.
I basically agree with what you're saying. And part of what I was, I think, saying is that we should, I've already tried to set up a meeting, although it's not as soon as I'd like it. I've got a meeting set up to have this conversation.
With,
So when did you say that was? The 22nd of February?
Absolutely, the
22nd of
22nd,
March.
okay,
22nd of March?
March.
March.
One thing that occurs to me though,
Okay.
I think I'm hearing Sarah. I wonder if might be possible wise for us to have a meeting with John Burke, possibly on the 10th of March, our next meeting, before the meeting with the town council. And to get another feel or a better feel for what he sees as the future role for the task force, if any. We can certainly prepare the report between now and the 10th. Work on that.
Okay, I think we can, I would take it one step further.
Okay.
I think we do need to have that meeting with John Burke. One, two, I've already met now with the new mayor. Just general get to know him. And so far, he hasn't said anything about this, but he has been willing to call other members of our household to get information, which means that he's interested in environmental issues and in probably sustainability. And so it may be appropriate for us to have also a conversation with the mayor before we meet with the council as well, because the mayor is the leader and has, well, it doesn't look like much power. It actually is a lot of power or a lot of authority, because he, in conjunction with the town manager, set the agendas and what's going to be looked at and when it's going to be looked at and how it gets all integrated as a picture before the town council. So I think that's perfectly appropriate.
Right.
I'm just wondering whether another way of sort of continuing a role and one that might actually be beneficial. And I don't know whether it requires a meeting with John Burke or whether it requires direction from the mayor, but is to say that our continuing role is as an advisory committee to this hire. We are here to work with the hire.
That's our assumption, though.
I'm saying that's what we would recommend,
Right.
that our continuing role be that. And so we're not necessarily dealing with John Reiner all the time. We're dealing with this person. And that is a process of bringing that person up to speed on any of these things that she or he have an interest in, that they feel like they need more information on. I was also trying to think,
It's a fine line to walk.
it is a fine line to walk, but that is where we could actually.
I'm saying
use
that
it.
right now. Of course, I would do it, but you see, we're specifically not to involve town staff.
As
Well,
of now.
As of now.
But we have gotten an agreement for us to sit on the selection committee.
Yes, that's right. Search committee.
And we have worked with Bert in particular to really work on the job description.
Yes.
And so we've already got.
Yeah, I know all that.
Yeah.
But now you're
Well, we
bringing
need
in,
to go to
now
the
you're
next
bringing
step.
in under Reiner and the picture changes, may change. Right, that's the thing.
Okay.
But I'm just thinking that, see, we're charged to come with some series of recommendations. And we look at that, it's just one more report. We're interested in action. Well, we come with a series of recommendations, and we have achieved some number of actions, the resolution and the hire. We can probably think of a few others that we might go after as sort of advocates for those points. Or we could say, with this hire, that really gets the town in the operational mode where hopefully bringing in grants and raising roadways, doing is part of the game. And we gracefully withdraw, retire. So it is, so and the alternate is that we're working with this guy, gal, they, as they come in.
I don't think of that as a daily kind of interaction, but sort of.
No, but it's.
To have a meeting with that person initially to just talk about what we've done and that kind of thing.
Well, I think, but I would hope as issues come up, we are flexible enough so that we can meet with that
That was
person.
what I was.
We just have to
thinking as an
establish
advisor.
that in a way that works for everybody.
Okay.
Mickey and Sarah, do you guys have either one of you have any thoughts?
Well, first of all, the new town council, I don't think thinks of us as a pain in the ass yet. So I think that we are, they may find out that in fact we are, but not yet. There are members of the town council, of course, who were part of the previous town council. And if to believed, they were all very complimentary to us about our willingness to be, lend our expertise to this issue. And so probably the mayor, the former mayor, Patrice, was the main impetus for our forming. And maybe that's why it didn't go through, let's say, the Conservation Commission or something. But for whatever reason, the previous town council supported us. And I think that at this point, we have no reason to believe that the new town council won't do the same. And this time we actually do have some things that we can say we've accomplished as we've been talking about. So whether they want us to continue, let's say, after the person has been hired or not, I mean, I would say that we could offer to continue it if they want at their place. If they want us to, yes, I would say yes. And I would do that without reservation, as long as the feeling was that, we at least had this position as kind of a quasi staff person for us to implement the action that we want. I agree with all of you who are talking about action and not just another report. So that's my feeling. I kind of disagree with Victor that yeah, if if God forbid Stonington wanted to hire me to do anything, they're gonna pay me $100 an hour. But as a citizen of Groton, I feel like I have a civic responsibility to step forward and offer what I can to make the town a better place. And I think all of you have always, for this commission and for other things that you've always done in all these years, have done the same. So anyway, before we get to, I think this happened the last time. We had all these scenarios about how we going to deal with their not wanting to support our position. Let's put it out there, and maybe we're going to be once again surprised, or at least pleased, that they're on our side.
Well, I've met with almost all the counselors on the new council, and I have no reason to believe they won't support us. I have every reason to believe they will support us. But I think you're right, Mickey, about that. The last council did support us, although they didn't push.
You misunderstand me. I was not talking about the council. I don't doubt the council supports us. I was talking about the operational folks in town. In particular, the planning department from that last meeting, but the operational people is what I was thinking, that when they look up, they see these commissions, task force, and the rest is just one more voice speaking and telling them what they need to do. The town council, I don't doubt for a minute, will welcome us and our comments with open arms.
So we are a creature of the council. We're not a creature of the department, of any of those departments. And so, if we're serving the role that the council wants us to serve, then that's what we should be doing. And part of that role, obviously, is not to alienate the worker bees. And part of our job, I think, is going to be to make sure that they know that we're working with them and not against them. But I think at this point, we're talking about a meeting with the town council, and we are a creature of the town council.
Okay, well, okay.
But I do think that we have got to get our arms around, what we have done, what we've recommended, and then what we are going to propose as possible options for a future role for the task force. And one of those options could be that we are available as an advisory group to the new hire, and that's the end of our role, is that offer.
Yeah.
Should it be accepted? I think the other offers, we've got to come together and agree on what are the valuable areas that we think, we would want to work with the new hire on, and where do we think we add, value? And then who do we think are the point people that individual needs to work with on other topics that remain? I mean, I think this is exciting in that I think we own what should be our future either existence and or remit.
And that's going to depend a lot on who that new hire is. If that, hopefully that person's not brand new to Connecticut, because that's going to make their job a lot harder. But I think that the role that we can play in an advisory role, I think, can be extremely valuable. And probably more so in some areas than others, depending on this person's expertise and experience.
Okay, so are we at a point where we can, we know what we got to do here?
You got an outline.
We got an outline? And we've got a lot of parts already in place, and we just need to put it together.
Which isn't going to be simple.
Which is not going to be simple.
I would say let's keep it simple. I mean, we've already presented all of this to a town council, and I'm not in a position, nor do I agree with updating what we already did. I mean, I think we can make the offer afterwards that if it's of interest, we can update it. But I think, we've already done all this work. I would instead seek the clarification of what our future remit is, then, and what we really feel we want to be involved in. So if members of the task force feel like the educational component is something, for example, that we're really interested in, that we're enthusiastic about doing, that we want to partner with the new manager to implement, and that we are volunteering our individual skill sets, our time, our expertise, that we will help with it, whatever. Okay, fine, that's an offering. But I don't know, that's sort of where I am. I am not able right now, nor interested in doing further work on the healthcare section and updating it. I can't support that.
Just bring up, I also want to remind you that what I sent to you, Maggie and Bowen, was the long form of what was presented to the town council. We have an abbreviated version of that. I didn't send that out. So to some extent, I think all of us have an abbreviated version
What I sent was.
that we
Yeah.
send to the council. So and it may be the same thing that we present to the council, because it provides a good overview. We might update that here and there, and then you add these other pieces that you had, because you had it started out with what's been done,
Right.
and then what needs to be done and what are the priorities in that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at something no more than 12 pages. Absolutely. And maybe even shorter if we could do it.
Yeah, I don't know how you came up with 12. What's that? Four,
Well, I don't know.
4 times 3? Is that
Something like that.
that's right. 10.
I mean, it needs to be short.
I don't know. I don't know. It sure needs to be short. It needs to be right to the point.
Right to the point. Anything else here?
Oh, sure.
How are we going to accomplish that by March 10th? Putting
Okay.
these pieces together?
Well,
I'm sorry, sorry.
How are we
Just say
gonna
that
get this
again.
done?
We have 3 reports that are in very different forms.
Sure.
So I'm just trying, how does that morph into what we want it to be?
So give it to the secretary and let her summarize them.
I don't think that's gonna work.
Isn't that why we're paying her the big bucks? I forgot that.
I just
I don't
went
know
up to
what- I mean,
500 an hour.
This is not my particular skill set. I'm certainly willing to sit with you guys and help do that, but,
Let's take a look at it in the next couple of days.
okay.
Yeah.
But is that all right? We'll try to figure that out, and Mickey, you're safe, you're away, and Sarah, you're sort of either
I'm excused.
you're excused with the-
Listen, if you guys send something or whatever and you want help with it, I mean, I just think, keep this very, very simple, and keep it simple around where you think you want to go in the future, and try to get confirmation of what you
Yeah.
think is the most important thing to work on. You don't need to send them all these things that we worked on over the last, whatever it is, 3 years, 2 years, 3 years,
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
maybe in the short form, but something very, very short. These guys get, they don't read what we do anyway, and they're not going to read, right?
2 pages, Frank says.
I'm saying 2 or 3 pages. We can-
Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
right. The
But,
most.
With this is with these as supplements or something like that. But-
Yeah.
But for the council, 2 or 3 pages.
okay,
And Giselle, if this is a meeting that could be Zoomed, I'd be glad to participate.
okay,
Yeah,
we can do that.
we can certainly put all of this stuff up and send it down.
Yeah, sure. And set it up to you, Sarah. How long are you gonna be up there? You're not telling.
We're up here till the 28th.
Okay,
And then I'm really off, because then I'm back and I'm in pre-game.
Okay,
I'm then a week out from
Yes.
surgery. So,
okay, okay. Okay, well, why don't we, we'll continue this as we go forward, okay? Okay, so we haven't really gotten to the discussion of educational effort here any more than we had.
It is at best tabled.
I think that's correct.
After our discussion with the planning department in early January. Because they plan a number of workshops around the downtown project. And we offered to help them with that, but the structure of those workshops is yet to be determined.
That's right.
And so because the last thing we want to do is stand up one day, although people will tell you that, and Mickey would agree that you got to tell them 2 or 3 times. But the last thing we want to do is have a meeting on sea level rise on Tuesday and have another meeting on sea level rise and Mystic on Thursday. And somehow be at cross purposes.
Right.
In the discussion.
Okay. Okay, so we'll table that. I think we're gonna okay, so I guess the only thing is that we might as well go ahead and talk about anybody had meetings that they want to share the rest of the group.
I met with the gal it's a gal that's been hired by Sea Grant. And Mickey knows all the details of this group of assistants, because I think it came through the Long Island Sound program, maybe the Citizen Advisory even. Her name is Alicia Tyson. She is from Colorado and Puerto Rico. She's quite proficient in Spanish. She is a PhD candidate, I think, possibly University of Colorado, I'm not sure. And I introduced her to the work that the task force had done and some of the problems that we see. And I showed her that proposal or grant that the town had received. She's, quote, interested in helping in any way she can. And I think her main role is communication. So it may be.
What's her name?
Alicia Tyson.
Yes,
What I got.
Tyson, Tyson, and ALICIA, I believe.
Not Alicia. Okay. ALICA. Alicia.
CIA, yeah, Alicia.
Okay.
Tyson. Tyson's easy to remember, right?
Yes.
Check.
The a cordial meeting. She knows of us. We know of her. Thank you very much.
Okay. I have talked with Frank about taking our GIS planner over to talk with Circa. I think Noah Feldman, who's the Feldman is the new guy, I think would be probably very productive for us for the town in the long run to have that one-on-one conversation so that the information can be shared. Noah seems to be really terrific about being responsive to getting things done. So I think that's something that we have in place. The other thing I was going to tell you is that I have had my first meeting with the Connecticut Department of Transportation, the head guy who's the project manager. He's a project manager for all the major planning grants or planning reports for the state of Connecticut. So it's going to be a little bit problematic about how things get done. What I've learned is that for the feasibility study, they've hired two, not one, two consulting firms to do the feasibility study. And so I'm expecting to see what happens with that. I had met with the Planning and Zoning Commission to talk about the transportation issue. I've also talked with the Groton Housing Authority about the same matter. And gonna have more conversations with the city of Groton and New London and Lewistonington. That's all I've got to report.
It isn't as much a report, but since we're not going to meet with the town council until this process is over with, I am wondering, are we in a position as a task force to comment on legislation, proposed legislation, and the proposed building code? Both of them are going to have big pushbacks from what the administration is
Who
proposing.
administration, town or state?
State. So the proposed changes in the building code that would do a lot of really good things will be vehemently opposed by most members of the building community and
Sure.
trades and stuff. And similarly, the governor's bills just came out, some of the ones in response to his executive order. And two of them have to do with building energy use labeling, which I tried to pass when I was in the legislature, and I've been gone almost 20 years. And it would be a huge thing in terms of awareness, and the big thing by requiring landlords to do that for rental units, it incents them to actually make some of the upgrades and things. So, I mean, I will comment as Jesse Stratton, but I would love to comment as the task force.
Can you get me a link to some of that, or do I have to go
No, I'll
hunt it
be happy to
hunt
send
it
it.
out? Building codes are particularly important.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
incredibly important.
Oh, I think energy labeling is also, we're not.
Just say as a member of.
Yeah, you can say as a member of, I think that's the way we would do it, because we're not really authorized unless it somehow affects the town.
Right.
And of course,
Well, it
building
does
code
affect the
clearly
town.
will,
Likely.
likely, so,
So there is a public hearing on the building codes on February 23rd at 1
Jeez.
o'clock. And then there is public comment can come after that. So don't have to do it on that. And I will just send you the link to get on.
Yeah,
today.
and how does how do our representatives, I'm thinking of Summers and whoever else?
None of them have been particularly outgoing on things, but I will certainly you saw today that Dora Cruz is not running again.
I mean, I know Formica to talk to him, I mean, that sort of thing, so, but
And-
he's not ours.
no, it would be Dela Cruz, Connolly and Summers.
Right.
On a perhaps depressing note, I listened in on a webinar that was done by the folks at Brown University analyzing how decisions have been being made in Hartford.
Right?
And I think that, and the bottom line was that almost everything that the Eversource and building trades and the Connecticut Business Bureau supported passed, and almost everything that they opposed failed or never made it to a vote. And that was in spite of the fact of having enormous public input in support of these very same legislations that these powerful triumvirate or quadrumvirate or whatever they are opposed. Now, I don't think money talks quite as loud to the town council, at least in terms of their ability to get reelected, as it does to the state legislators. However, it kind of refutes a little bit of what Victor was saying, is that, yeah, it's great that we have very vocal advocates for environmental legislation or environmental action here locally, and it's great if that action, their support produces that action. But on unfortunately, at least according to this analysis, on the state level, it's well,
Pretty bleak.
it's pissing in the wind is what it is. And
Makeup of the legislature. There aren't very many environmental advocates in the membership of the General Assembly and the State Senate. Very few.
so there's an expression in Spanish, mucho ruido, pocas nueces. And it's actually what the if in Spanish you ever want to go see Much Ado About Nothing in a Shakespeare play, that's what the title would be in Spanish. But literally it means lots of noise, few nuts. And I think that to some extent, I walked away from hearing that report by the Brown folks, feeling like that's what seems to be happening in Hartford, at least.
Oh, okay, but so back to the question. Jesse, I think you should probably send out this to everybody in the group, and then I think it's difficult for us to, like, as a task force to do this, but as a member,
I think I can say that.
yeah.
And I think I did on some
You have.
legislation last year.
You did, and so have I.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
That's
I'll
fine.
just do it that way.
Anything else?
You see, I see some potential in the building code business to bring it down to the Mystic River and some of the complaints about building down where they were allowed to build
Amen.
as part of a discussion if we were sitting around the table with the town council.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
the
it.
building code could be very powerful. If I mean, it is in parts of the
And
country.
zoning and building. Yeah. You know, what is
Zoning
it
and
gonna be?
building code both.
Okay,
Okay, anything else?
I know Howard is down south because he has his fly swatter at the ready. That's right.
Anything else, Sarah?
That's right.
Okay, anything else for you, Mickey?
Uh,
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you all. We'll be in
Bye,
touch.
guys.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Adios. Vaya con Dios.
Gracias.
Okay, I'm gonna turn this thing off now.
Just turn it off
And
and there'll be another one.